In this video, we're going to look at one of the three documents for the QEP, or the PFQ, the progression of learning. So just a reminder that the three documents are the Programme de Formation de l'Éducation de Québec, or l'École québécoise, which is the one that has all the competencies and the broad areas of learning, and it talks about skills that students need to know and what that looks like. There's also the progression of learning, and that really focuses on the content, so what we're going to teach, when we're going to teach it. And the framework for evaluation of learning, which, as the name suggests, talks about evaluating the students. But today, of course, the focus is on the progression of learning. So this is the progression of learning for English as a second language. So let's get started. If you open up the progression of learning, hopefully you have downloaded that and have it safe somewhere on your computer. You'll see a table of contents, and we have the introduction, and we have 5 different categories of knowledge that students will need to know to develop their skills in English. So these are the categories that you're going to need to teach. Let's have a quick look at the introduction and see why they've organized it this way. And just so you know, the progression of learning, the PFQ, all of this stuff is not just randomly thought up by a bunch of teachers sitting in a staff room somewhere. It's actually really research-based. So they did take their time when they wrote this up to really dig into the research, what works when teaching language. So you're going to see this here in the preamble. Take a second to read through it. It talks about the crucial role of the competencies, but how knowledge supports those competencies. So if you're going to speak, what kind of things do you need to know in order to interact orally in English? And we're focusing today on the Cycle 1 program. So that's the grade 1 and 2s, if you remember, the babies, the ones that are just starting out. And it says here, research shows that young learners benefit more from living the language. So just like in their first language, how do we learn? We learn through playing with the language. They're drawn through rhythmicality. You're going to see why songs are important, right? Sounds and stress patterns, intonation, rhythm, and pace of the spoken language. So songs, games, stories, anything that really helps them hear and feel and play with the language so that they can try to make sense. As they get a little older, so cycle 2 and 3, grade 3, 4, 5, and 6, they need to be given opportunities to practice that language in meaningful contexts. So not just playing around with the songs and games, but also learning how to use it to introduce themselves or ask questions or say they need help, describe their favorite sport or a funny pet that they saw that they would like. So that's the kind of thing we sort of move away from just playing with the language into actually using it. So you're going to see again, and this is where songs and games and stories really come in. Remember, we're focusing on cycle 1 today, but there are other levels. The progression of learning exists for all the grades from grade 1 all the way up to secondary 5, which is grade 11. So in Cycle 1 program, we're going to see that the first category, contextual language and functional language, what is that? Well, contextual language and functional language is what the kind of knowledge that we need to be able to speak and interact and understand things in English. In Cycle 1, that's words or strings of words, short expressions that will help them to communicate and to understand the text. So their personal language repertoire is strings of short words and expressions, things like hello, my name is, today is, I feel. Okay, so little chunks of expressions like that you're going to practice with the students in grade 1 and 2 through songs and through stories especially. And it will help them to act on understanding. So when the teacher says, hello, they know how to say hello. And if the teacher says, show me how you feel, they'll hear the word feel and they'll know that they have to show an expression, for example. It also allows them to respond or start to respond. Say fine, good, happy, hello, those sort of things. So they're starting to give their responses. And how do we do this? You see right here, it says it's a natural kind of emergence through the use of authentic songs, rhymes, and stories and participation in classroom routines. So the grade 1 and 2 classroom really looks like a lot of songs, a lot of games, a lot of stories, learning language in a fun kind of natural way. As you get to cycle 2 and 3, as we said, they are doing a bit more task-oriented language learning. So the functional language here is more useful expressions and vocabulary that really help them to interact orally in English. It also will help them to read and understand text and maybe even start to write short sentences. So for cycle 2, functional language again, useful expressions, things like, I don't understand, can you help me? I believe that. All of these are useful expressions you're going to see in the functional language section. These are sort of whole chunks of language. So we don't just learn isolated words. We learn how they work together in chunks. And we do learn individual words like help, please, mine. This is primarily for interacting orally, but as we said, it will really help them too for understanding texts and for writing texts. All right, so what does the progression of learning look like? Well, you're going to see on each page, there's a funny kind of chart table like this. And you can see here the nice legend. If there's an arrow, it means you're introducing it and you're starting to build understanding with the students. So that's being introduced. And if there's a star, the students should be so familiar with it that they're able to apply it by the end of the school year. On the left-hand side is cycle 1, so grade 1 and 2. And on the right-hand side is cycle 2 and 3, so grade 3, 4, 5, and 6. And you can see here it's pretty nicely laid out. So for example, we're going to see the kind of contextual language in routines for grade 1 and grade 2. You're introducing things like choral responses. Hurry up, let's go, no problem, finished. And as they progress a little bit earlier, you're going to have a bit more classroom routines. What's the date? It's April 2nd. What's the weather? It's sunny, etc. Okay, so that's what you're introducing it in grade 3. And by grade 4, they should know this pretty well. You're going to see all different kinds of categories of functional language. So they've categorized it according to things like, can they give instructions to their partner? Can they stall for time? Wait a minute, not ready. Can they ask for help? Can they identify things that are important to them? And that's in grade 3, 4, 5, remember? And so this is cycle 1. Cycle 1 is a lot more basic. We're responding to instructions in routines. Are you ready? The kids can say, I'm ready. In cycle 2 and 3, so grade 3, 4, and 5, and 6, they can give instructions, they can ask for help. You remember, you're introducing it and developing it, and by the end of the year with a star, they can do it by themselves. That's functional language. They're also being taught vocabulary, right? So this is our second sort of subcategory of language. So in grade 1, they're learning words like clap. If the teacher says, clap your hands, they should know what to do with clap. So that's cycle 1. They're also learning short expressions when they're joining in to perform songs and rhymes. So if I say, hello, 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 and how are you? I'm fine, I hope that you are too. The students will say, the teacher can then say something like, hello, and the students can say, hello, right back. So they're sort of performing back, call back songs, that kind of thing. You can also tell stories. So if there's passages in stories that repeat, the students will be able to do that with you. That's why Robert Munch stories are so fabulous, because there's always passages that repeat. In cycle 2 and 3, it's a bit more concrete. So we're giving action words and things like that. There are other categories of languages. So remember that there are strategies. I'm not going to go into those now, but I advise you to take a time and just go through it and see the kind of strategies that we're teaching. Okay, so strategies for cycle 1 and cycle 2 and cycle 3. And language conventions. Now you may say, what the heck is a language convention? Language convention is grammar. So when do you teach what? It's all in the progression of learning. So cycle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It tells you, for example, that you don't teach any grammar in grade 1 and grade 2. You only start to look at grammar in grade 3, 4, 5, 6. Text components. So texts are anything like songs or stories or videos or web pages, all kinds of different things. So again, we have songs and rhymes and stories in grade 1 and 2. Contextual language, songs, rhymes, and stories. And in grade 3 and up, we have other more robust kind of stories and different things that we're looking at there. Finally, the fifth category is cultural elements and cultural products. And again, I want to show you something cultural. Yeah. So remember that when we teach in English, we're not just teaching language, vocabulary, and grammar, and word chunks and expressions. We're also teaching culture, which is the final reason why using songs and stories is so important, because when you take songs and stories from English culture, you're teaching them about English culture in a fun way. So you're going to see here, look at that, discovers cultural elements through nursery rhymes, choosing rhymes, jump rope rhymes, action songs, circle rhymes, bouncing rhymes, stories like Mouse's First Halloween, The Very Hungry Caterpillar, and little videos and things that are produced in English culture that you might want to share. So that's it for the progression of learning with our focus on cycle 1. And again, remember that these exist, the progression of learning exists for all the grades, grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. This particular progression of learning is for elementary. There is another document for secondary. So I'm going to encourage you to take time to read through the progression of learning, write down your questions, and bring them to class and ask me and ask your peers. That's it. Thank you.